Welcome to the Power of Design podcast. My name is Jack Osa. I'm an architect, born and raised in Colombia, South America. Years ago, I migrated to the United States to follow my dreams, and today I'm the founder and principal of Osa Studio, a multidisciplinary architectural design firm in Charlotte, North Carolina. In this podcast, we talk about design, business, creativity, and the inspiration we need to create an exciting and powerful built environment. In this episode of the Power of Design podcast, I had a great conversation with my friend Alan Angle. He is an architect and currently VDC FM Integration Manager at JLL. We talk about design, construction, how to be efficient, and what is the meaning of good design. This is my conversation with Alan. Alan, welcome to the Power of Design podcast.
Thanks for having me. Glad to be here.
How are you today?
Just fine.
Man, you just got wet.
Yes, we had a huge storm.
That's crazy.
It was even hailing on the way here.
Yeah. So I'm very excited to talk to you today. You know, we have known each other for many years and we kind of cross paths here and there. And I really like, what I see from outside was you're about design and technology, which are two things I'm very passionate about. But we never really had time to sit down and talk about that. So, I'm excited about that. But before we dig into those topics, why don't you tell me a little bit about yourself? Where are you from? How did you get to where you are today?
Sure. From Virginia. Grew up there. My father was an electrician. So I grew up in the industry. He'll say that I was on the job site when I was 10 years old. With him, I would say by the time I was 12 or 13, I was actually, working and actually doing things. By the time I was 15, 16, I was completely wiring houses on my own. For him, I should have gotten my electrical license and didn't, but I learned a lot. It was very enjoyable. Got to early on look at drawings and house plans and see things and, go in and rearrange light fixture layouts or something like that I thought were better or that they just hadn't been laid out, to begin with. So that was kind of very enjoyable. And that kind of got me where I was going. My mom also had done some residential work for some people, drawing up plans and stuff like that. So, I kind of knew a little bit about that. So that's kind of where I guess I would probably say I got my interest in architecture. I learned very early on too that, as my grandfather was a trade, to respect the trades.
Yeah.
And I always had a lot of, damn architect from him when he was looking at drawings. And it made me also think too that I was always going to get along with contractors and in the process, and also know how to build, because I felt like so many architects, designers, they don't really, know how to build.
Right.
And they come up with ideas that, just don't work. So I was a huge Nebraska Cornhusker football fan. And so they had a great architectural program. So I was going there. In my junior year, I met who is my wife today. So I didn't feel like going to Nebraska was going to keep that relationship going. And that was the only school I'd applied to. So I actually went to a community college to figure out where I needed to go now, because it was that time. And so I got my associate's degree, which is really good because, it's kind of technical based. And once again, I was going back to, learning how things were done and put together. Had a great blessing coming out of there that I beat out a bunch of tech students and got an internship at SFCS in Roanoke, Virginia, and worked with what was my mentor then and today, Steve Tennis, and just learned a lot about him. I also learned a lot about the profession in the sense that, things obviously they don't ever teach you in school, that, as much as we love design, as I said, there is that putting the buildings together, but at the time, SFCS would have a true project designer, and he would just pass it on to the architects the project architect in late CDs or early CDs. And Steve was like always going out to the field on his own time to check the projects. And I'm like, what's up with that? And then so I kind of learned how that process went, and that wasn't always the best process either, because the project architect didn't always know what the project designer was, and things weren't
Right.
lining up. So that was a real education in that process. And while I was there, one of my kind of other mentors there, he had actually come to the States based on a relationship with the dean at the Catholic University of America School of Architecture. So he told me all about the school. He said it's a great school. It's like practically like an Ivy League school as it relates to design and stuff like that. I loved DC, and at that point I was determining, what my next step was. I wasn't, just going to stop with my associate's degree. And they had a program where I didn't have to start over, because a lot of design schools, if you have an associate's degree, they want you to do all of their design over again.
Yeah.
So it's almost like starting over. But they had a program where you could you could go to school during the summer. So I basically went to school for 2.5 years straight with no break.
Wow.
Because I did studio during the summer, in DC, and that was great. And what better place to study architecture than in DC, because it finally came down between Catholic and state, and I'm like, Raleigh, DC, well, that's not much of a choice. So that was great. Got a job with HSMM after college, and was there, which is now part of AECOM, and then went on to a firm in DC called Core. My grandfather had some accidents with his electrical business. I came back here, worked for a small firm in Lynchburg, Virginia, which was perfect. I got to do my first museum,
Nice.
which was a children's museum in an old warehouse. Couldn't have been better. So that was great. Then when that project was done, instead of moving back to DC, my wife said, "Where else can we move?" Because I still say today, if we went back to DC, we might not have kids.
Right.
So we came to Charlotte. Was at Shook Kelly for a while. Then I was at M&M's, where our paths almost crossed.
Yeah.
Was there for a year while I was deciding where I wanted to go next, and got an opportunity with Freelon, which is now Perkins and Will. They opened an office here in Charlotte. I was one of the first employees, and we grew that office. I designed their office. So what more fun can you have when you design your own office?
Oh yeah.
So that was cool. They decided to pull out of Charlotte, and so I went to Gensler for about 5 years until the recession. And then after the recession, Freelon's office was actually built by Cox Shep here in Charlotte at the time. And Andy Cox always kidded me that, he may hire me on the construction side at some point. So I came a-calling based on that. I was there for 2.5 years doing quality building. Going out
was
to
that the
site.
first time you worked on the construction
Yeah,
side?
that was the first time I had actually completely left the architectural side. Probably didn't know what I was doing.
Right.
I will say the most interesting thing about that at that time was, I still was kind of doing, I was still at the point that, architect and construction was two different things.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's when I first really started to see. I also, for the first time in my life, saw what people were talking about architects.
Yeah.
I had the blessing and privilege to work, like I said, with Freelon and Gensler.
Yeah.
So I didn't really know to a certain degree about what bad drawings were.
Oh yeah.
But I learned real quickly. Coordinating things, checking things. I was going out in the field and checking, flashing details and other things. And then I was kind of, starting that kind of virtual design and construction process there as well of, how do we do that and what do we do with that? Because that was starting to kind of come into the industry more. So that was really good. And then the most eye-opening thing with that was I went to my first BIM forum at that time, the AGC BIM forum. And I was amazed there to see these young people on the construction side, maybe my age, maybe a little bit younger, and how they were sharing with one another. And they were all from different, organizations, different companies, but they were just sharing what they were doing, how BIM was changing the industry on the construction side and stuff like that. And so, that kind of sparked my interest and kept me interested because I had always been using technology to further what I was doing.
Yeah.
For example, I was modeling in Form Z all of the buildings I did and just exporting out DWGs to do the articulation for the construction drawings because I wanted to see how the spaces looked. I wanted to share with people, what they look like. When digital cameras came out, I would do a punch list in about 15 minutes and people were like, how did you do that so fast? I would just go take photographs of everything.
Yeah.
And I would compile it into one big, huge PDF. I would write on the PDF, mark it up, draw over it, whatever, and
That's
boom,
right.
there it was, done.
Yeah.
So I bring stuff into Illustrator and draw over the photographs.
Yeah.
I mean, all kinds of things. So I kind of always had that kind of technology thing in there. But at that time, it was more just technology part of what I do.
Sure.
Left Cox and Shep for this opportunity that opened up with JLL now to kind of come to the owner side as I look at it. Not as JLL being an owner, but actually working with owners at JLL. And now I've been at this going on 11 years in November. So
Wow,
it's been
that's
fun.
exciting.
It's been interesting. It's been exciting.
Yeah. So where do you think your fascination with technology comes from?
Like I said, I think at first it was just more of what I wanted to do to get my job done or get my point across. I mean, for example, I would have died for an iPad back in the day.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
I mean, I remember literally carrying around 11 by 17 full sets of documents because I wanted to be in the field and know what's going on, opposed to going back to the trailer and trying to figure out things all the time.
Yeah.
So I think it was more just what I need to do to get my job done today. And I think I'm kind of even that way with my owners today. What do you need to know about technology of how it can better improve what's going on or just, know what's going on? Because with a lot of our owners that we're working with, it's not their job to know what's going on here. There's they have other things to do on their day to day.
Oh, sure.
Let me help you with what my day to day is so that it will benefit you. And you don't need to learn all of this. You can learn, enough to be educated and speak to it. So
Yeah.
I think it's just that matter of, helping your workflows and making your work a better process.
Sure. Yeah. No, I find it very interesting because you having that career, typically a person joins the architecture profession and is like, okay, let me pay my dues and I need to do this and I'm going to stay here forever. And there is this path and it's project architect and then senior project. And I see that you were never like afraid or scared to start, taking a different route. Like, you trust your skills, you know who you are. So man, I can add a lot of value here. I can add a lot of value if I maybe shift a little bit, still within the built environment profession.
Yeah.
But you keep moving, and I'd like to learn more about what you're doing today. But I will guess that you pretty much created your own position, because the set of skills you acquire is not a traditional path that everybody has.
Right.
You had an experience where you're arming yourself with this, set of tools that is very unique.
Well, I appreciate that, but quite honestly, I think a lot of that unfortunately was forced on me, and I had to have just a little bit of faith in that process. With the recession and other different things happening now, I have been one that I have never, and we used to kid about this at Gensler with some of the people there. I've never been a person for titles or promotions or anything like that to a certain degree. I just wanted to do my job and do it well. I also learned back when I was back at Casey Mattern and AECon too, that sometimes people get promoted out of what they're good at and get promoted into what they're not good at.
Yeah.
And that was something I never wanted. I mean, we had some good architects there that got promoted into project management, and that's not what they were good at.
Oh yeah.
And
it's different.
And it kind of suffered. So I did wanted to kind of stay as much as I could, like I said, to what I was doing, but I did kind of get forced into these a little bit and just had to take some chances. When I moved to the construction side, wasn't that big a deal. I thought I could handle that, and I thought I did have the skills. And I started, reading and learning. I'm always trying to keep up on things. When I took this job that I have now, it was a big step. I actually had a job offer in hand at the same time, just to go back to the profession as what I was doing before.
Right.
And I never felt comfortable with it. I felt comfortable with this. I had no idea what I was getting ready to step into, and JLL had no idea what I was getting ready to step into either. So we just kind of did have to venture out and see what we can do. And it did, but it relied on a lot of the skills I had learned. They needed someone that could speak the architectural talk that they needed to speak with people, and not needing the FM side or the FM technology. They could teach me that. They needed somebody that knew Revit. I had been blessed when I was at Gensler to learn Revit. That's actually what got me through a small job that I worked at in between some jobs there during being laid off. So, knowing Revit, it's always been a value.
Yeah.
I know it seems like no matter where you go. And that was the value that took me here, that I knew Revit. I had done it at project levels. Now, how do I have those conversations with design and construction teams about what, our owners wanted out of Revit, wanted to do in the process? I had learned quite a bit of different kind of technologies on the construction side. If I hadn't have done that construction for 2.5 years, I wouldn't have been prepared for this job.
Wow.
I do know that.
Yeah.
That really did set me up. I learned a product called Vela Systems at the time, which then became BIM 360 Field, which then became Assets, and started just to leverage some of that learning and that technology on the owner side, so that we can start to help the owners for what they wanted. But we basically, JL had people coming to them, and they were like, we have these owners that have projects being done in Revit, and they want to continue to use those models, and also how can they leverage the VDC process to get the asset information that they haven't been able to get on projects before.
Yeah. So what's an example of a client you're working with? Can you just walk me through the process? What kind of needs do they have? What's that first approach? Do they know what they need? They don't know, and they walk through the solution that you're providing.
Yeah, and that's kind of changed over the years as well. I mean, first of all, when we came in and JLL wanted me to do this, it was how do we manage the model at the end of the project? And that was kind of the thing, and how do we get there? And what I started saying was, hey, we need to look and talk to contractors and get involved with them. They have a big part of the process. And so we started from just doing that to then hearing and listening to owners where, okay, you know what? Owners and architects and contractors are always talking about building execution plans or BIM execution plans. Well, I'm of the mindset is you can't execute anything until you know what to execute on. The design team may execute what they need to with their other disciplines, or a contractor with their trade partners, but they can't execute anything with the owner unless they know.
Yeah.
So then we started working with owners to kind of create those standards as well. So we have a couple of different owners doing different things. We've worked with UNC Charlotte probably the whole time I've been here on different projects. We built their BIM implementation plan. I usually call them VDC implementation plans anymore, because BIM's only one tool in the whole kind of process.
Right.
There's a lot of other tools that we're using. So why pinpoint BIM out in that process? One of my best clients that I enjoy working with is Bristol Myers Squibb, where we're helping them create a full lifecycle management program to take that model that's being developed just for design and having the asset information that we need started in the right process. And I always say it like this: is you coming from the architectural side, you know this. You've typically got direction from owners saying this is how we want our rooms numbered,
right?
Potentially, and no one's ever told a lot of engineers this is how we want the equipment named.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're doing that now. So for example, we have a lot of things set up where when an engineer puts an air handling unit or a VAV box into the design, that's the name that it's going to be in the owner's system
Yeah.
ever, how far down the road that is.
Yeah.
And then that allows us now to all talk about the same asset as well. We can follow it through the full life cycle of design and construction and into handover. So helping them be able to create that process where they get all of that nice, good asset information.
Yeah.
Once again, contractors have gotten a bad rap over the years that, they wait till the last minute to do handover or whatever. Well, you know what? They've also never had any really good technology like they have today,
Right.
to be able to actually do some of this work that we're talking about now.
And I think that even culture and history within the profession is just always been done that way, and things work. So nobody ever questions
Right.
how to do that. Do you look at other industries and see how they're doing it? Because I'm sure, for example, if you look at, automotive or manufacturing or building computers, I'm sure those industries, they have standards. Even though they're different manufacturers, they all name the things the same way, they all fit with each other. Do you look at other industries for that?
Yeah, and we've even, some of our clients, BMW, for example, they're talking about stuff related to BIM and how they can life cycle their building in Revit. And then they show me some of the stuff they're doing on the manufacturing side. And I feel like so small, because it's amazing kind of what they're doing on that side and what they've done and what they can do. But taking some of that same kind of logic to the process, even learning, there's a huge difference in what we do as it relates to building architecture and building buildings that are manufacturing, and what they're doing and how their systems are so much different, and how they relate with P&IDs or other, very instrumentized processes, with what's been going on with Inventor for many years, and how skids and other things are putting together. So there's a lot to learn of how that process kind of works and how that can be pulled over and looked at it. Once again, how it's looked at it in Revit, but also how it's looked at just for the overall life cycle of that building that they're maintaining.
One of the buzzwords that I'm hearing lately, it's
Don't say it.
Digital twin.
Yes.
and when I hear those words, I'm like, okay, everybody's saying this, but what does that mean? Like, in terms of, like, in my mind, I've never been part of like a digital twin project, but in my mind, I imagine is, okay, you have a digital version of an existing, physical building, and it's a twin because, ideally it's exactly the same. And the other thing is that, well, is that a dumb model, or how much information? So there is just a huge spectrum of what that is. So have you heard about that, and how do you deal with that term?
Yeah, we're doing a lot with that. I mean, so I sometimes narrow it down and say data twin to a certain degree as well. But I would agree with you, yes. And the way I look at it is too, it is if we have a physical building, we also have a digital representation that we're maintaining, and that's what our clients are doing. So, and I always kid now, because that is a buzzword, and I'm not trying to make a big deal, but in some sense of how a digital twin works, we've been doing it for 10 years now. We've had Revit connected to Archibus or connected to Tririga, and our owners are maintaining their buildings and they're maintaining those Revit models. Now, no, are they, we've stripped them down to a certain degree. They don't have every piece of insulation on the ductwork or all of the duct hangers and all of that, but they have the major information in there that they can maintain them. And I mean, where the digital twin is going and where it can go is, then you connect that to your BMS or other things. You start doing reactive and preventive maintenance based on that type of information, have sensors in. So, I mean, we have some of that going now. We haven't gotten to the reactive or anything like that with a lot of our clients. But we have gotten to the point where we're managing a model that is it's a virtual version of their physical building. When something changes in the physical building, it changes in the model if it needs to. Sometimes it may just be something changed and a model number changed, or or serial number changed. So it's not really a physical change. But trying to keep up with those, we have a lot of projects at JLL where we've got sensors connected and they're tracking information with sensors and stuff like that. We've for many years had a BMS connected to our IWMS, feeding it information, but we haven't gotten to the point where we're doing anything with like predictive or anything like that just yet. But we're setting the groundwork for where we can do that, and we've got to take baby steps. We some clients were lucky if they've been maintaining AutoCAD files in the past just to keep up with their space.
Yeah.
So now to have a mechanical model that they're keeping up with, or how do you manage a Revit model for space? That's always something we're having to teach and explain. So it's definitely a learning curve. We're no longer also moving dumb lines. We're moving walls that have ratings. Do they go to structure? Do they go to just above the ceiling?
Yeah.
There's just a lot more going on now that's not what it used to be, kind of on the operational side as far as maintaining something that they've maybe been maintaining in the past with CAD, or maybe not maintaining at all.
Yeah. So, in my point of view is, to me, when you advance something is when it becomes simpler. Simplicity, streamline,
Yeah.
efficient, easily understandable. And sometimes when we get into technology solutions, you need to go back and make it complex. And hopefully at some point it's going to be simple. But, when you talk, I see a lot of complexity. And that's hard because not everybody can handle complexity. But at some point you need to like battle with that and work it out, because eventually you learn, you simplify, what works, what that doesn't work, to eventually get to that point. Like, where do you think the industry is in that process to get there? Because everything you talk about is like a no-brainer. Like, of course, who wouldn't want to do that? It makes a lot of sense. But it's expensive, there is no expertise, sometimes you don't know what software to use. When do you think is gonna become just a standard and a norm for every building?
I think we're getting there. I think the AEC side is obviously caught up. I think the issue we see is, especially like on well, actually both on the architectural and the construction side, is they're asking questions. They're willing to help, but the owner's got to give them the right direction, and the owner's got to be somewhat educated in that as well. Because
Yeah.
I have a couple clients, especially universities in Canada, and sometimes I just sit in on calls with them because they have a general idea, but they know a question's going to come up that they can't address because once again, it's not their day to day.
Yeah.
And so I kind of help them address some of those questions so that they become educated. Because the one thing I have learned is I've sat in rooms with owners who say they want this and this for this reason. And just by how they said it, they showed their ignorance of what they know about it.
Right.
And we've got savvy enough design and construction people, they know that right away as well.
Mm-hmm.
They know what they're asking for is not what they really need or want. So I think as we educate the owners, they then can be more responsive to what's going on, and they can ask for what they want in a better way. And we have more and more people calling us all the time now to help get them started, help, kind of what are the next steps to how do we do this? And we have it from all different aspects. Help us get started because we have no good asset standards and we have no good modeling standards. So we need to, start and learn from something. And then we have clients that just want to know how to now manage a model with their IWMS opposed to using AutoCAD as they had in the past. So, and then we have a bunch of questions to see what do they really even need to, because a lot of times I'll talk with a team and I'm like, I don't know that you really actually need to go to Revit or go to BIM to manage what you want to do. If AutoCAD is working for you and you've kept it up the way you need to, it might be serving the purpose you need. You may not be going to get the return on investment that you think you're going to get. And number one, kind of that is always, are you doing a lot of new projects? And that's kind of the key, because that's where a lot of the ROI comes from. Is you're doing a lot of big projects. You can start from that very beginning and do that entire process to get the assets and the model delivered so that you can move toward that eventual digital twin that's, doing a lot of different things for you. But if you're not, and you're sitting there with the same kind of building most of the time, that might not be, the way to go. So just educating them has been the key thing to then my contractors or my design team seeing, okay, they do know what they want. I do
Yeah.
understand what they're saying. They can answer my questions. They're not just saying, give me a Kobe file and give me a Navisworks model.
Yeah.
And which does them no good
Yeah.
at the end of the day.
Yeah.
The Power of Design podcast is brought to you by OSA Studio, a multidisciplinary design firm focused on creating impactful experiences through the power of design. We partner with our clients to create buildings, interior spaces, brands, and strategies that help you deliver a successful project. As a minority-owned firm, we are committed to building a diverse platform of curious and driven design professionals so we can together pursue our full potential. For more information, please visit us at www.osastudio.com.
I always say that great architecture and great design, it's two things. It's functional and it's beautiful. And what you're doing is, extending the functionality and taking it to another level, of efficiency and usability and ability to change, to transform. But I think the beautiful part, which is talking more about aesthetics, about user experience, it's equally important. How do you address that in the type of work that you do that is very technical and process and things like that? Because I know you have an appreciation and you understand the value of quality design. How do you bring that into the conversation?
Well, unfortunately, I don't get to do that as much anymore, and I have to be quiet a lot sometimes. Because sometimes I don't fully agree.
Yeah.
But I've also been able to get out in the field and do some things for different clients and see the new things that they're doing with design and with office layouts and stuff like that. That's been very interesting and very fun to see. I mean, luckily with the position I'm at, I'm typically working with a lot of the mainstream architects that are doing really good design. So I still get to see that. That probably also is the reason sometimes I'm like, do I want to go back in the industry? Do I want to go back? And makes me miss it a little bit more. But, I've come to the point now that if you would have told me when I left the design side, so I mean, I was a project designer, project architect for almost 17 years. And when I left, if you would have told me that I would enjoy doing what I do as much as I did then, because I loved what I did,
Yeah.
I would have said you're crazy. But still being able to be in the industry and just solve problems in a different way for clients has been really interesting. I mean, I do modeling in Revit now and some other things, but how I've learned to add parameters and do some things with Dynamo and the other, I'd have been like, I never wanted to do that
Right.
when I was a designer. So it's just taking some other different ways to solve problems in a different way. So I've had to take kind of that, to say power of design or to say my design that I really want to do and just hone it in a different way to help owners in a different way and provide them a different service. I mean, I love my clients that I have now. I truly enjoy working for them. In most cases, they've brought me in. I'm a true extension to their team, which has been great. And I've gotten to meet and work with a lot of different people that, I never would have per se on the design side. And I've learned something totally different. I mean, I never went through mechanical models and mechanical drawings the way I do now. I never appreciated mechanical the way I do now.
Oh, sure. The things that you don't see.
Right.
But you know what? That's one of think one of the reasons that made me call this the power of design is because I think we really need to redefine what design is, because I think a lot of people think design is artistic expression or visual appealing drawings or buildings, which yeah, that's part of that. But to me, it's the design process. Is how do you approach the problem solving process? And I think that's design. Sometimes I feel if I'm putting together a contract or a proposal, that's design. I'm designing this thing. I'm
Yeah.
designing how do I say it, what goes first, what's next, and you can translate that to structure, foundation, order. How do you present it? There are all these things that once you realize that's all the world of design.
Yeah.
And sometimes people, when people say, oh no, I'm not creative or something like that, well, everybody has the ability to be creative. We
Yeah.
all have a brain, we all can learn, we all have a heart, we all like things, we know what we like and we don't like. We have the ability to be creative. But when you say I'm not creative, well, guess what, you're not going to be creative because you just told yourself that. But I think in what you do, I think that design conversation is kind of the huge thing that it's like sleeping there, because it's part of the conversation.
Yeah.
You cannot talk about only functional machines.
Right.
It's the same like if you compare, let's say, buildings with cars, where a car, yeah, is this machine very well designed, is organized, you have all these parts replaceable, but cars are beautiful too, and they're designed,
Right.
and the design goes along with that thing. I think that's where the buildings are gonna get and value in that, that aesthetic is like I see it is like comparing a human, like your mind and your heart. You're still those two things together.
Yeah.
You're analytical, you think, process, but you also feel and you appreciate things.
Well, it took me time to get there. I mean, when I was on the architectural side, I was kind of blinders on. That was design.
Yeah.
And then as I have went through more things in my career and made kind of these changes and not being able to actually, always design buildings, to see that, there is and are other ways to look at how you do design. And I mean, I listen to a ton of podcasts, and typically, and I listen to a lot of industry podcasts too. And a lot of times they're roughly on the same subject matter. I mean, some of them now anymore, I'm just fast forwarding. I'm like, okay, I've heard that 10 times, just in 10 different ways. And that is one thing that, I think I've told you this before, I've really enjoyed about your podcast. Because when I first heard it, to me or someone else may think, okay, he has a different architect on every day, or a different, mechanical engineer, or a product designer or something like that. And you've had none of that to a certain degree. You've been all across the board with corporate real estate and all different kinds of things. And it's been very interesting to hear and see that, because to your very point, you've shown how there is all these other types of design in this process. I mean, we have a project development and services group within JLL, which is basically they're see them as an agent. And, they're overseeing the project all the way through, and they're doing some amazing things with the buildings they do. But, a lot of people would say they're not designing anything. Well, they've got to be a master at dealing with that schedule and that program, and architects and engineers and construction teams and all of that. And you don't get good at that unless you have some creativity to make sure all of that works and matures the way it does.
Yeah. When you mentioned a while ago that you didn't know what bad drawings were until you saw bad drawings, that's been my experience since I started my own. Sometimes, you need to do a project and there's existing building, or, I see a lot of others architects drawings, and sometimes I see things, I'm like, oh my God.
Older. I'm talking about projects we were building, Jack.
Oh my God.
I'm talking about the column structure. The column wrap was 3 foot from the actual column.
Yes. And from my side, is the hard thing is you realize, one, unfortunately, the client didn't know what they were buying, right? They say, oh, you're an architect. You sell plans and design like any other architect, but they don't understand the difference on
Yeah.
the quality of design and the quality of the documents, which is huge. And it's hard to compete because I know what we're selling. We're selling high quality, and I'm very proud of what we produce.
Right.
And sometimes the clients, they don't see that. And when they're kind of arguing and about the price and something, I'm like, it's gonna take me like 2 days to explain to you what the difference is.
Right.
And it's like everything, you get what you paid for. But I've been very surprised to see very bad quality drawings. So based on that, I have a lot to say about the architecture profession in general and architects. But now that you've been like outside looking at the architecture profession, with enough time, what do you think of the architecture profession in general?
I think it comes down to probably what we've always thought to a certain degree. A lot of the larger firms that we know that have put the passion and the time in with individuals, those are usually really good. And then a lot of the stuff in the middle is kind of hit or miss. You have some people that are very passionate and very committed, so it's good. And some of them are there to, get their job done. This is their profession. And I think that was the difference I had. I was just always very passionate, and I was the typical architect that, may spend 3 hours doing something that, I should have only done an hour for because I was being billed, but it was more about what I was doing in that process. And I think as you grow in it, you learn to manage those two things so you can balance out those two things. But I think at the end of the day, it always comes down to the passion you have in what you're doing, of whether you're going to commit to the time and effort. Because the other thing is here, you didn't learn and it was done. If you're not continuing to educate yourself about what's going on, you're still stuck in that time of where you were. So Are you still drawing by hand? I mean, because you were good at it and did that? I mean, your education has got to change in that process about learning what's going on and what's changing and how to improve yourself so that you can, improve what you need for your client and stuff like that. But it's been across the board. The other kind of thing that's been unique in this process, I kind of was in this as Revit came on as well. So I've seen how people use Revit as well. I remember actually the first project that I did on the owner side that I was kind of hired to do with a client. We were trying to figure out what we were going to do with this model and move it on to the owner side for them to manage, connected to their IWMS. And I guess I should say, because Nathan Wood always gets on me for this, Integrated Workplace Management System, because I throw out acronyms and people don't know what they are. But I started getting into this model, and I'm like, what's going on? Because the drawings looked really good.
Yeah.
I mean, excellent. But they had basically used Revit to draft.
Oh.
So you would find enough piping to a toilet or ductwork to a VAV box to show up correctly in the documentation. But when you got into the model, there was nothing there.
Yes.
I mean, it was like 4-foot links or 3-foot links and was completely unusable. So I have seen in the industry, I have seen the value of Revit increase. I think everybody's beginning to see that there's a lot of other different things they need to do within, technology with VR becoming, very usable in our industry. I still don't understand why contractors are showing owners things in VR and the architect's not. So I'll leave it as that. But I see
I'm doing it. So.
I see way too many contractors showing the owner stuff in VR, and I'm like,
Yes.
it's a little late now, or why is the contractor doing it?
Yeah.
And why didn't the architect do it? I see a lot of things going on with, where we're going to go with mixed reality, with maybe the HoloLens and what it can do. That's going to be really, I think, amazing for the construction industry, and being able to be out on a site and see your design and the construction at the same time, and being able to, put up studs based on what you see, not having to always measure as much. So I think it's a very exciting time to be in the industry. But I think also, once again, if you're not going back to educating yourself in this process, there is so much going on that you're just not going to be able to keep up with. And I think even if you are keeping up, your head's about to explode with everything that's going on.
Oh, yeah. What do you think is going to be the future of all this conversation? Design, construction, efficiency, technology. Like, what do you think is going to be, or what do you hope it will be?
I don't know. I mean, I'm old school. I mean, when I was in college, I did hand drawings. I love doing hand drawings. And I actually just pulled out some and showed my daughter yesterday, because she was like, "That's not drawing when you're drawing on the computer." And I'm like, "Okay, well, here's some hand drawings."
Yeah.
But, I'm kind of old school in the sense that I hear about a lot of the automation and other thing that's going on. And, I'm skeptical. I've seen enough of it to know that it is improving, but I'm also skeptical in the sense of, what are we losing in that process as well?
Yeah.
I don't know about the architectural side, because I just haven't been involved in it as much, but, I just think of the construction side as, we just talk about people laying brick. I mean, that is a true talent.
Yeah.
I mean, people will not think it is, but it's a true talent. And we don't have a lot of masons coming up learning how to do that. And we've got mason laying robots now. And, that, concerns me a little bit about what people are going to do as far as enjoying the industry. Now, I love the whole concept of moving as much of the construction into a warehouse, and putting it together there, and then doing as little as necessary in the field, having to stick build. So I do really enjoy that, and I think that's going to maybe bring people into the profession. I mean, I think a lot of what keeps people out of the profession is, they don't want to be involved in cold weather or hot weather. But what, if you're doing your job and you're doing modular construction inside of a controlled environment, that opens up a lot of opportunities that people will get, involved in the industry. I think my other big rant that I have about the industry related to technology and automation and people getting into the industry a lot of times we have a lot of people talk about more people coming into construction, more women into construction, more minorities into construction, all of that. And that's great. But a lot of times I push back and say, a lot of the people that you're putting these statistics on are people that are working for a construction company. And the job they're doing is not 100% related to construction. They could have been doing that in any business.
Yeah.
They're just construction because they work for a construction company.
Sure.
When you show me the new people that are out there welding, laying brick, putting ducts together, that's when you really have changed who you're bringing into the industry relating to minorities, women, all of those type of things. And like some of the women welders that are out there right now, amazing what they're doing, and amazing what they also had to go through to get to where they are. But, to me, that's the real change in construction. And those are the people, to me, that need to sell it back to the industry that this is fun, this is great, you're building things. And that's, to me, when you're really bringing people into construction. And I think between that and the automation, then it can be a great thing.
Oh, yeah.
But I fear too many people maybe pull out of the equation.
Yeah, no,
in the
I
process.
think the key thing is to mix the technology side with the human side.
Yeah.
So let's advance those two together, because I think we have this, I don't know how to call it, like contradiction, that we love technology, but the more technology, the less human it is, like the more machine. So we cannot forget we're still humans. We need to help each other. We need to advance each other and don't only focus on that, because at the end of the day, I don't know where might be a podcast or something when I hear somebody saying, everybody should just focus on, learning computer engineering and creating AI, because the best future that this person was talking about, it was a future where you have artificial intelligence doing all the work, and we humans, we just enjoy life, and the robots work for us. They create the food, they serve us, and nobody works. We just enjoy our experience of life,
Right.
which it was very interesting.
Well, I was listening. I've been reading a couple books, and I don't know if it's books I was reading or books and podcasts, both. But I think the problem with that as well is humans put a lot of what they do on a daily basis is part of their life and part of them as a person. And I mean, you even hear all the time about people that retire, and they either pass away really quickly, or I think I was listening to a podcast the other day, and they were talking about, I think the sweet spot was 14 or 18 months. When you get to whichever one of those numbers it was, you're either okay not doing anything, but the majority of the time you're coming back part-time, full-time, something else, because you've just run out of things that you thought you wanted to do, or you've come to the conclusion you really enjoy what you're doing and you still think there's opportunity out there for you. And because that's definitely me. I mean, I don't see retirement in my future.
You know what? I think that's more about, that's what you've been doing all your life. So if you stop doing it, you don't know what else to do. And I think the key point of that conversation is what your identity is.
Yeah.
And I think that's, since Industrial Revolution, our identity as a modern human is tied with what we do. So that's why you introduce, this is my friend, he's a doctor. This is my friend, he works here. Like, we immediately need to attach with what we do to gain value. But if you're born in a society where that is not, your value doesn't come from what you do, comes from who you are, maybe it takes, 3 or 4 generations to
I
I
still think as humans, we're still going to be filling a void of something we want to accomplish, something we want to do. I mean, artists paint for not money.
Yeah.
It's just something that's inside of them that they want to do.
Maybe the robots create jobs for us for fun.
Well, that's what they say, but I don't know.
Well, man,
I think that'll be after my time, so that'll be okay. I don't have to worry about it as much.
Well, Alan, thank you so much for your time. I really enjoyed this conversation. We could keep going for 3 or more hours, but
sure
my kids are waiting for me. So we may need to do a part 2 of this podcast. So
anytime.
Thanks so much for everything you're doing. I'm always very appreciative of what you do, excited, thankful for a lot of opportunities you had open for me. So I really appreciate that.
Well, I value what you do a lot, Jack. If someone, especially in the Charlotte area, calls me, and I know it's related to design. I actually did have someone call me the other day, and I was about to call you, and he was like, I need some drawings to take to the building department. And I'm like, okay, that's not a Jack call.
Well, I get some of those too.
Yeah, but I knew that wasn't the call you wanted from me, so I said, no, that's okay. I passed him on to someone else. But, I appreciate what you do, and I know the hard work you've done. You've amazed me of what you did. I mean, you talked about me leaving. I got forced out. You left Gensler to do this, and that's a huge deal, and it amazes me. I could have never done that on my own. Like I said, I got pushed out. So, and then what you've done with the podcast amazed me. Like I said, I probably listened to every one of them. I've enjoyed it, and I think you're doing an amazing thing here, and I wish you all the blessings in the future.
Thanks so much, man. Thank you for listening to the Power of Design podcast. Please remember to subscribe, rate, and review if you like this content, and find us online at thepowerofdesignpodcast.com. I invite you to join my mission to become a better version of yourself through the power of design.